There is a number that the WNBA does not want you to think about too carefully. Not because it is complicated, not because it requires any special analysis or insider knowledge to understand, but because once you truly absorb what that number means, the entire carefully constructed narrative that ESPN and the league office have been selling you for 3 straight years collapses instantly, completely, and without any possibility of recovery. The number is 2.6 million. That is how many people tuned in to watch Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever play on CBS last Saturday afternoon. Not a playoff game, not a championship, not some kind of historic rivalry matchup with decades of storylines behind it. A regular season Saturday afternoon game. 2.6 million viewers. The second most watched WNBA game in 26 years of the league's existence. And somewhere in the league office, behind closed doors, away from any camera or microphone, the people who run this league are not celebrating that number. They are terrified of it. Because that number does not just prove that Caitlin Clark is the biggest draw in the WNBA, it proves something far more dangerous to the establishment. It proves she is the only draw. And now she just declined the invitation to participate in the 3-point shooting contest at All-Star Weekend. The silence from the league office has been so loud it has its own echo. What you are about to hear is not opinion. It is not hot takes dressed up as analysis. It is a documented, receipts-in-hand breakdown of how one player accumulated so much leverage over an entire professional sports league that she could look at their marquee event and say no thank you, and there is absolutely nothing they can do about it. This is the story of how the WNBA spent 3 years creating the exact monster they are now terrified of. And this is the story of what happens next. Pull up any sports media outlet right now and search for coverage of Caitlin Clark's ratings. You will find celebrations. You will find headlines cheering the growth of the game. Sports Illustrated ran a piece essentially throwing a party over Clark's viewership numbers, and buried inside that celebration, tucked between the congratulatory language and the optimistic framing, is the single most damning admission you will ever see from a professional sports league. They are celebrating one player. Just one, because there is only one player worth celebrating. Here is what the celebration obscures. The same week that Caitlin Clark delivered 2.6 million viewers on CBS, a so-called marquee matchup between 2 other WNBA teams aired on ESPN. The media promoted it. Analysts hyped it. It was framed as appointment television featuring players the league has spent years trying to elevate into household names. The final viewership number was 954,000. Not even a million, not even close to a million. And that was on ESPN, the most powerful sports television network in the country, with the full promotional machinery of the Walt Disney Company behind it. Then take a look at Amazon Prime. The NBA's average viewership on Amazon this season sits at 439,000 viewers per game. That's the average. That's what the league considers normal. But when a specific game featuring a player the media has relentlessly positioned as a generational talent aired on that platform, only 313,000 people tuned in. The average is already embarrassingly low, and their promoted star could not even hit the floor. These are not cherry-picked outliers designed to make a point. These are the actual numbers. This is the actual product. And the gap between what Caitlin Clark delivers and what everyone else in the league delivers is not a gap anymore. It's a canyon. It is so wide and so deep that the people standing on the other side cannot even see the bottom. The WNBA has been around since 1997. 26 years of games, players, championships, storylines, and marketing campaigns. And in all that time, across all those seasons, only one other game has ever drawn more television viewers than Caitlin Clark on a random Saturday afternoon. Let that settle for a moment. Every player who came before her, every marketing push, every effort to build stars and create moments, none of it produced a number bigger than what one player is delivering on an ordinary weekend in the middle of a regular season that most people weren't even planning to watch. The disrespect did not happen all at once. That's the part that makes it so calculated, so deliberate, and so impossible to excuse. It was built slowly,
layer by layer over 3 years, and it came from every direction simultaneously. It started on the court. From the moment Caitlin Clark stepped into the WNBA, certain players made a point of letting her know she was not welcome. Not through competition, not through trying to outplay her, through physical intimidation, through cheap shots that crossed lines any referee in any professional league should have called immediately. Hits that left marks, fouls that had nothing to do with basketball and everything to do with sending a message. And the league office watched every single one of those moments and said nothing. Commissioner Kathy Engelbert, the person whose entire job description includes protecting the players in her league and maintaining the integrity of the product, sat in silence while her most valuable asset got targeted on national television. Not once, not twice, repeatedly, over 3 years. The kind of silence that's not accidental. The kind of silence that's a choice.
Then there was the media dimension. ESPN, the network that holds the WNBA television deal and therefore has a direct financial stake in the league's success, spent those same 3 years running a parallel operation. On one hand, they aired Caitlin Clark games and collected the ratings. On the other hand, their commentators and analysts spent enormous energy constructing a narrative that the WNBA had multiple stars, that the league's growth was organic and broad-based, that Caitlin Clark was just one piece of a larger puzzle. Anonymous voices with television platforms told their audiences week after week that other players were just as important, just as talented, just as capable of drawing an audience. The ratings said otherwise every single time. But the narrative kept getting pushed because admitting the truth would mean admitting that your entire television deal is dependent on one player's continued willingness to participate. And through all of it, Caitlin Clark stayed professional. She showed up, she played, she delivered performances that broke records and moved needles and created moments that people actually remembered. She did not make public statements calling out the league. She did not go on television and demand better treatment. She absorbed every cheap shot, every dismissive media narrative, every instance of the commissioner looking the other way, and she converted it into fuel and poured it directly into her game. For 3 years, she was exactly what a young professional athlete is supposed to be: patient, focused, letting the work speak. But patience has a ceiling, and 3 years is a long time to absorb disrespect from the people who need you the most. When the invitation came for the three-point shooting contest at All-Star Weekend, Caitlin Clark made a decision that every person paying attention to this league should study carefully. She declined. 2 words: no thank you. And those 2 words just detonated underneath the WNBA establishment like something they never saw coming, even though they built the exact conditions that made it inevitable. Think about what the three-point shooting contest actually represents for Caitlin Clark, specifically. She is the best shooter in the league. She is the player who just lit up CBS for the second most watched game in 26 years. A primetime ESPN event built around shooting, featuring the best shooter in women's basketball, would have been appointment television. It would have generated highlights. It would have trended on social media. It would have given casual fans who only vaguely know Caitlin Clark's name a reason to tune in and a moment to remember. It would have been exactly what the WNBA desperately needs and almost never gets. And she said no. Now ask yourself why. Because there are really only 2 possible outcomes if Caitlin Clark participates in that contest. If she wins, the narrative machine immediately cranks up. Social media fills with voices saying the league bent over backwards for her again, that she gets preferential treatment, that the whole thing was staged to make her look good. The criticism comes regardless of the result, because the criticism has never actually been about the results. And if she loses, the same voices that have spent 3 years trying to chip away at her reputation declare victory. They say she is overrated. They say she folded under pressure. They say the other players in the league are just as good, and here is the proof. There is no version of that contest where Caitlin Clark comes out ahead. Participating would have been charity. It would have been doing the league a favor that the league has spent 3 years demonstrating it does not deserve.
So she made the only move that actually made sense. She declined. And in doing so, she sent a message that required no press conference, no statement, no carefully worded social media post. The message was delivered through the absence itself. Figure it out without me. Let's see what the numbers look like. The scramble that followed Caitlin Clark's decision told you everything you needed to know about the actual depth of this league. Kathy Engelbert needed to fill the three-point contest roster, and the list she assembled is either the most honest accidental admission in WNBA history or the most embarrassing public display of a league operating without options. The names announced for the contest are players that the overwhelming majority of casual sports fans have never heard of. Not because they are necessarily bad players, but because the league has never succeeded in making them recognizable. These are not household names. These are not players who move needles or trend on social media or give casual fans a reason to tune in. They are professionals who exist in a league that has failed to build them into anything beyond that. But here is where the story gets genuinely stunning. Sophie Cunningham was not on that list. Sophie Cunningham, who is shooting just under 44% from three-point range this season. 44%. For context, Steph Curry, who is widely considered the greatest shooter in the history of professional basketball, has shot 42% over his entire career. Cunningham is outperforming that number right now in this season, and the WNBA did not invite her to participate in their three-point shooting contest. She also has genuine name recognition. She has a following. She is one of the very few players in this league outside of Caitlin Clark who has demonstrated any ability to generate interest from people who do not already consider themselves WNBA fans. And she was left off the list entirely.
Sabrina Ionescu also declined her invitation. So the league's backup options for their marquee shooting event evaporated one by one, until what remained was a roster that would struggle to generate interest from the players' own extended families, let alone a national television audience. And ESPN has to air it. They have to put it on television, promote it with a straight face, and hope that the numbers are not as catastrophic as everyone who has been paying attention already knows they are going to be. This is the part where the WNBA's defenders will point to the NBA and the NFL and note that those leagues deal with star players declining All-Star participation all the time. And that is true. Every year, the NBA's dunk contest features a roster of players who were not anyone's first, second, or third choice. Every year, the NFL Pro Bowl rosters are filled with players who made the team because everyone ahead of them on the depth chart decided they had better things to do. Star players declining exhibition events is not a new phenomenon in professional sports. But the comparison completely falls apart the moment you examine what makes the WNBA different from every other league having this conversation. The NFL does not need the Pro Bowl to survive. The NFL prints somewhere in the range of $20 billion in revenue annually. Their television deals are locked in for years. Their sponsorship relationships are ironclad. Their cultural relevance is so deeply embedded in American life that the league could cancel All-Star events entirely and nobody would notice a difference on the balance sheet. The NBA is in essentially the same position. All-Star Weekend for those leagues is a corporate obligation, a marketing event, a weekend where sponsors get their photo opportunities and the league sells merchandise. The actual competitive result is irrelevant because the foundation underneath those leagues is so solid that no single weekend can threaten it. The WNBA is operating on a completely different financial reality. This league loses money every single season. Not occasionally, not in down years, every season. The NBA subsidizes the WNBA to the tune of tens of millions of dollars annually just to keep operations running. There is no massive television deal generating billions. There is no sponsorship infrastructure that can absorb a bad weekend and move on. Every opportunity to create a moment that casual fans remember matters. Every chance to demonstrate that the league has star power beyond one player matters.
All-Star Weekend, even as a glorified exhibition, represented exactly that kind of opportunity, and the league is walking into it without the one player who could have made it worth watching. When you are a league that cannot afford to miss moments, and you just missed the biggest moment of your calendar, the consequences are not abstract. They show up in the ratings. They show up in the sponsorship conversations that happen in the weeks after. They show up in the network meetings where executives look at numbers and make decisions about future investment. The WNBA is not in a position to absorb a catastrophic All-Star Weekend the way the NFL absorbs a forgettable Pro Bowl. There is no cushion here. There is no margin for error. What Caitlin Clark did by declining that invitation is something that has almost no precedent in the history of this league. She exercised leverage, real leverage, the kind that does not come from contract negotiations or public statements or social media influence campaigns. The kind that comes from being genuinely, demonstrably, irreplaceably necessary to the financial survival of the institution you are dealing with. Every other player in this league operates within a power structure that the league controls completely. The league sets the schedule. The league determines the television appearances. The league issues the invitations and expects participation. Players who decline risk being labeled difficult, uncooperative, bad for the sport. The establishment has used that threat effectively for years to maintain control over how players engage with league events. But that threat only works when the league has something the player needs. It only works when the player's career, their visibility, their marketability depends on the league's goodwill. Caitlin Clark does not need the WNBA the way the WNBA needs her. That is not an opinion or a talking point or a piece of manufactured controversy. That is a documented financial reality backed by every ratings number from the last 3 years. She came into this league with a following that dwarfed anything the WNBA had built in 26 years of existence. She maintained that following through every cheap shot, every dismissive media narrative, every instance of the commissioner staying silent while she got targeted. She grew that following, and she did it despite the league, not because of it. The establishment thought they could manage her the same way they manage every other player. They thought the invitation to the All-Star contest would be accepted because players accept invitations. They thought she would show up, participate, give ESPN their moment, and the league would get to collect the ratings without ever having to address the 3 years of institutional disrespect that preceded the invitation. They were wrong about all of it. And now they're scrambling to fill a roster for a contest that nobody outside of the players' immediate circles is going to watch, while the one person who could have changed that calculus is sitting this one out entirely. The power dynamic in this league just shifted in a way that cannot be undone. Caitlin Clark demonstrated that she has the leverage to say no, and the league has no recourse. That knowledge does not disappear after All-Star Weekend. It informs every future negotiation, every future invitation, every future interaction between Clark and the establishment. She showed them exactly where the power sits, and it does not sit in the commissioner's office. Here is exactly what the next 2 weeks look like, laid out in specific, documentable predictions that you can come back to and verify.
The three-point contest will draw fewer than 600,000 viewers on ESPN. That is not a pessimistic projection. That is an informed estimate based on what this league consistently delivers when Caitlin Clark is not on the screen. The 954,000 viewers for the so-called marquee matchup earlier this year represented a peak for non-Clark WNBA content on ESPN. A shooting contest featuring players that casual fans cannot name is not going to outperform that number. It might not come close to it. And when the official viewership data comes out, ESPN will not promote it. They will not put it in a press release. They will not celebrate it on their morning shows. It will get buried under the next news cycle as quickly as possible, and the people responsible for programming that event will hope that nobody does the math comparing it to what Clark delivers.
Within 72 hours of All-Star Weekend ending, expect a statement from Caitlin Clark's camp. It will not be angry. It will not be a direct attack on the league or the commissioner or ESPN. It will be polished and professional and carefully worded in a way that leaves absolutely no ambiguity about the message underneath the politeness. She will make it clear that she is aware of what she represents to this league, that she is aware of how she has been treated, and that the decision to decline the invitation was not made lightly. Read between the lines of whatever language her team releases, and the subtext will be unmistakable. She is done absorbing. Kathy Engelbert will be forced into a public response. Whether it comes through a press conference, a media availability, or a carefully arranged interview with a friendly outlet, the commissioner cannot stay silent after the All-Star Weekend numbers come out. The questions will be too direct and too numerous. She will try to frame Clark's absence as a personal choice made for reasons of rest and recovery. She will use whatever corporate language she has available to make a voluntary boycott of her marquee event sound like a reasonable scheduling decision. The media will not accept that framing. The follow-up questions will be pointed, the pressure will build, and Engelbert will be forced to navigate a public conversation about her relationship with the only player keeping her league on television, a conversation she is catastrophically unprepared to have honestly. ESPN's internal coverage strategy will shift. It will not be announced, it will not come with a press release or a mea culpa or any public acknowledgement that the previous approach was wrong. But watch the next month of WNBA coverage on that network. Watch how prominently Caitlin Clark appears in their promotional materials. Watch how the narrative around the league's star power quietly adjusts. The network cannot afford to pretend there are multiple draws after the All-Star Weekend numbers confirm what the ratings have been showing for 3 years. The adjustment will happen in real time. It will just be dressed up as evolution rather than correction. The Indiana Fever will make the playoffs, and when they do, the first-round series will generate viewership numbers that make every other playoff matchup in WNBA history look like a preseason scrimmage. The casual fans who tuned in for the 2.6 million viewer Saturday afternoon game will tune in for playoff basketball featuring the same player. The stakes will be higher, the games will be better, the social media engagement will be enormous, and the ratings will settle every argument that 3 years of punditry has refused to settle with honesty. When those numbers come out, the people who spent 3 years insisting the WNBA does not need Caitlin Clark will have nowhere left to go with that argument. The data will be too clear. The contrast will be too stark. The conversation will finally be over.